of man's first disobedience, and the fruit of that forbidden tree, whose mortal taste brought death unto the world and all our woe, with loss of Eden, till one greater man restore us and regain the blissful seat. Sing, heavenly muse, that on the secret top of Oreb or of Sinai didst inspire that shepherd who first taught the chosen seed in the beginning how the heaven and earth rose out of chaos. Those opening lines of John Milton's Paradise Lost set out a long-pondered argument of a poet who, by the time he came to write them, was, you might say, a voluntary exile. Milton was now in his 50s, stripped of all the political responsibilities he had held during Cromwell's rule, stripped of most of his property, fined, protected from worse revenges by the efforts of a few loyal friends. And he was blind, totally blind, able to compose only in his head and to dictate his words. This was the man who, as an undergraduate at Christ's College, Cambridge, in the 1620s, had been so beautiful that he was known as the lady of his college, who, supported by his father's belief in him, studied and traveled on his own for years, preparing for the great work he knew he had it in him to write, but who, in 1660, at the restoration of Charles II, saw behind him the wreck of his life as a valued counsellor of the state, the deaths of 2 wives, and as for his writing, mainly the reputation of being a dangerously radical pamphleteer. But Milton knew he was great. He knew it was a matter of time, study, and perseverance. While he was still young, he wrote to a friend, "You ask me what I am thinking of. So may the good deity help me, of immortality. And what am I doing? Growing my wings." If such answers sound inhuman, well, there was something uncommonly proud, withdrawn, and dedicated about Milton. The estrangement of his first wife probably resulted from this. But if proof were needed that he could have profoundly human feelings of love and loss, there's a sonnet he wrote in 1658 after the death of his second wife, Catherine. She had never recovered from giving birth to a child, who died 6 weeks later. Milton had already been blind for several years when he married Catherine. He never saw her. Her face was veiled, as he says in the sonnet. He would see her in heaven.
Methought I saw my late espoused saint, brought to me like Alcestis from the grave, whom Jove's great son to her glad husband gave, rescued from death by force, though pale and faint. Mine, as whom washed from spot of childbed taint, purification in the old law did save, and such, as yet once more I trust to have full sight of her in heaven without restraint, came vested all in white, pure as her mind. Her face was veiled, yet to my fancied sight, love, sweetness, goodness in her person shined so clear, as in no face with more delight. But oh, as to embrace me she inclined, I waked, she fled, and day brought back my night.
For many years, Milton had the ambition to write an epic. First, it was to be an Arthurian epic. But after he came back from his travels in Italy in his early 30s, he wrote down a list of almost 100 subjects for a large-scale work. And increasingly over the years, his mind turned towards a drama or epic on Adam and Eve. As he saw it, such a work would need to treat the incidents that led up to their creation and their fall, to see them foreshadowed in the fall of Satan himself. And to do that, it had to go back to the original chaos, the vast abyss over which God brooded and out of which he created everything. So quite consciously, in the spirit of Homer and of Virgil in their own ancient epics, Milton begins Paradise Lost with an invocation to the heavenly muse, an invocation which is also in some sense a synopsis of all that will follow. War in heaven, the fall of man, an attempt to justify, that is, vindicate the ways of God to men.
Of man's first disobedience, and the fruit of that forbidden tree, whose mortal taste brought death into the world and all our woe with loss of Eden, till one greater man restore us and regain the blissful seat. Sing, heavenly muse, that on the secret top of Oreb or of Sinai didst inspire that shepherd who first taught the chosen seed in the beginning how the heavens and earth rose out of chaos. Or of Zion hill delight thee more, and Siloa's brook that flowed fast by the oracle of God. I thence invoke thy aid to my adventurous song, that with no middle flight intends to soar above the Aenonian mount, while it pursues things unattempted yet in prose or rhyme. And chiefly thou, O Spirit, that dost prefer before all temples the upright heart and pure, instruct me. For thou knowest, thou from the first wast present, and with mighty wings outspread, dove-like satst brooding on the vast abyss, and madest it pregnant. What in me is dark, illumine. What is low, raise and support, that to the height of this great argument I may assert eternal providence and justify the ways of God to men.
Things unattempted yet in prose or rhyme. There, at the beginning, we have quite explicitly the exalted ambition Milton set himself. And what things? A cast list of gods, Satan, good angels, bad angels, sin, death, titanic struggles, cosmic villains. For this stupendous adventure, Milton felt that the necessary technical instrument couldn't be what he called the jingling sound of like endings, that is, rhyme, but the English equivalent of the unrhymed achievements of Homer in Greek and Virgil in Latin. Milton himself called it English heroic verse without rhyme. In spite of Milton's withdrawal from the world, when Paradise Lost was first published in 1667, it quite quickly began to be noticed and even revered. It went into a second edition in 1674, the year of his death, and from then on, it became both a commercial success, though Milton himself received only £10 for it, and a potent influence on thought in general and poetry in particular. The age to come, more worldly in many ways, was nevertheless prepared to see it as a great monument. Today we are bound to have our difficulties with Paradise Lost, but as one of its modern editors have put it, if the imagination of the modern reader cannot go along with Milton's passionate faith in God and free will and the attainment of a paradise within, he can at least hardly fail to respond to a compassionate myth of the precarious human situation. A myth which in one way or another comprehends all that man has felt and thought and done throughout the course of history. Listen to what is in some ways the first great speech of the poem, in book 1 of the 12 books. Satan, cast down by God to hell with the other rebel angels, sees close by him one next himself in power and next in crime, Beelzebub, Satan's lieutenant. And Satan addresses him like this.
If thou beest he, but how fallen, how changed from him, who in the happy realms of light, clothed with transcendent brightness, didst outshine myriads though bright. If he whom mutual league, united thoughts and counsels, equal hope and hazard in the glorious enterprise, joined with me once, now misery hath joined in equal ruin. Into what pit thou seest, from what height, fallen. So much the stronger proved he with his thunder. And till then, who knew the force of those dire arms? Yet not for those, nor what the potent victor in his rage can else inflict, do I repent or change, though changed in outward luster. That fixed mind and high disdain, from sense of injured merit, that with the mightiest raised me to contend, and to the fierce contention brought along innumerable force of spirits armed, that durst dislike his reign, and me preferring his utmost power with adverse power opposed, in dubious battle on the plains of heaven, and shook his throne. What? Though the field be lost, all is not lost. The unconquerable will and study of revenge, immortal hate and courage never to submit or yield, and what is else not to be overcome. That glory never shall his wrath or might extort from me, to bow and sue for grace with suppliant me, and deify his power, who from the terror of his arms so late doubted his empire. That were low indeed. That were an ignominy and shame beneath this downfall, since by fate the strength of gods and this imperial substance cannot fail, since through experience of this great event, in arms not worse, in foresight much advanced, we may with more successful hope resolve to wage by force or guile eternal war, irreconcilable to our grand foe, who now triumphs, and in the excess of joy, sole reigning holds the tyranny of heaven.
It sounds as it's intended to do, like the high-pitched speech of a military warlord, a generalissimo. God is the poem's hero and Satan's enemy. But in Milton's poem, it is often Satan who is given the most marvelously rhetorical lines. But the real voice of Paradise Lost, whichever character is speaking, is Milton's. Very occasionally, you can hear Milton speaking in his own person, not just as narrator or dramatizer, but directly from his own heart, powerless in his isolation. Though fallen on evil days though fallen, and evil tongues, and darkness and the dangers compassed round, and solitude. But most poignantly and powerfully at the beginning of Book 3, when he speaks out of his blindness in a great hymn to light.
Hail, holy light, offspring of heaven firstborn, or of the eternal, co-eternal beam may I express thee unblamed, since God is light, and never but in unapproached light dwelt from eternity, dwelt then in thee, bright effluence of bright essence increate. Or hearest thou rather, pure ethereal stream, whose fountain who shall tell? Before the sun, before the heavens thou wert, and at the voice of God, as with a mantle, didst invest the rising world of waters dark and deep, one from the void and formless infinite. Thus with the year seasons return, but not to me returns day, or the sweet approach of even or morn, or sight of vernal bloom, or summer's rose, or flocks, or herds, or human face divine, but cloud instead, and ever-during dark surrounds me. From the cheerful ways of men cut off, and for the book of knowledge fair presented with a universal blank of nature's works to me expunged and raised, and wisdom at one entrance quite shut out. So much the rather thou, celestial light, shine inward, and the mind through all her powers irradiate. There plant eyes, all mist from thence purge and disperse, that I may see and tell of things invisible to mortal sight.
Much of Paradise Lost is cast in the form of a great debate, of arguments and counter-arguments between such protagonists as Satan and the angel Gabriel. Interleaved with the debates are passages which seem as if spoken by some sublime commentator who stands above these planetary exchanges and orders of cosmic battle. The voice of this commentator is, of course, Milton's. But it's his voice in its guise of epic narrator, the vigorous, almost godlike, self-appointed heir of Homer in the Iliad or Virgil in the Aeneid, or perhaps most closely, the Dante of the Divine Comedy. Here is that voice at the end of Book 4, which follows the description of Satan surrounded by his angels, threatened by Gabriel and the others during the war in heaven.
While thus he spake, the angelic squadron bright turned fiery red, sharpening in moonlit horns their phalanx, and began to hem him round with ported spears. As thick as when a field of Ceres, ripe for harvest, waving bends her bearded grove of years, which way the wind sways them. The careful ploughman, doubting, stands, lest on the threshing floor his hopeful sheaves prove chaff. On the other side, Satan, alarmed, collecting all his might, dilated stood, like Tenerife or Atlas unremoved. His stature reached the sky, and on his crest sat horror plumed. Nor wanted in his grasp what seemed both spear and shield. Now dreadful deeds might have ensued, nor only paradise in this commotion, but the starry cope of heaven perhaps, or all the elements at least had gone to rack, disturbed and torn with violence of this conflict. Had not soon the Eternal, to prevent such horrid fray, hung forth in heaven his golden scales. Yet seen betwixt Astrea and the Scorpion sign, wherein all things created first he weighed, the pendulous round earth with balanced air in counterpoise. Now ponders all events, battles, and realms. In these he put two weights, the sequel each of parting and of fight. The latter quick up flew and kicked the beam.
So Satan, hindered, as Milton puts it, in the prose argument attached to the poem, by a sign from heaven, flies out of paradise. From then on, in spite of Raphael's explanation to Adam and Eve of what these battles mean, the reasons for and manner of the creation, the dangers attendant on the two innocents, it's only a matter of time for Satan to return with meditated guile, in the form of a serpent, and for the whole predestined story to work itself out. Eve eats the forbidden fruit. Adam follows her example. The guardian angels forsake paradise. The Son of God intercedes for our first parents. But the decree is that they must be banished from the garden. So, to come to the conclusion of Milton's final book of Paradise Lost, Book 12, the angel Michael leads Adam and Eve out of paradise. They are reconciled, chastened. There is hope in the distance. Michael speaks at the beginning.
This having learnt, thou hast attained the sum of wisdom. Hope no higher, though all the stars thou knewest by name, and all the ethereal powers, all secrets of the deep, all nature's works, or works of God in heaven, air, earth, or sea, and all the riches of this world enjoyest, and all the rule one empire. Only add deeds to thy knowledge answerable. Add faith, add virtue, patience, temperance, add love, by name to come called charity, the soul of all the rest. Then wilt thou not be loath to leave this paradise, but shalt possess a paradise within thee, happier far. Let us descend now, therefore, from this top of speculation, for the hour precise exacts our parting hence, and see the guards by me encamped on yonder hill expect their motion, at whose front a flaming sword in signal of remove waves fiercely round. We may no longer stay. Go, waken Eve, Her also I with gentle dreams have calmed, portending good, and all her spirits composed to meek submission. Thou, at season fit, let her with thee partake what thou hast heard, chiefly what may concern her faith to know, the great deliverance by her seed to come. For by the woman's seed on all mankind, that he may live, which will be many days, both in one faith unanimous, though sad with cause for evils past, yet much more cheered with meditation on the happy end. He ended, and they both descend the hill. Descended, Adam to the bower where Eve lay sleeping ran before, but found her waked, and thus with words not sad she him received. Whence thou returnst, and whither wentst, I know, for God is also in sleep, and dreams advise, which he hath sent propitious, some great good presaging, since with sorrow and heart's distress, wearied I fell asleep. But now lead on. In me is no delay. With thee to go is to stay here. Without thee here to stay is to go hence unwilling. Thou to me art all things under heaven, all places thou, who for my wilful crime art banished hence. This further consolation, yet secure, I carry hence. Though all by me is lost, such favor I unworthy am vouchsafed. By me the promised seed shall all restore. So spake our mother Eve, and Adam heard, well pleased, but answered not, for now too nigh the archangel stood, and from the other hill to their fixed station, all in bright array, the cherubim descended. On the ground, gliding materials, as evening mist risen from a river o'er the marish glides, and gathers ground fast at the laborer's heel, homeward returning. High in front advanced, the brandished sword of God before them blazed, fierce as a comet, which with torrid heat and vapor as the Libyan air adust, began to parch that temperate clime. Whereat, in either hand, the hastening angel caught our lingering parents, and to the eastern gate led them direct, and down the cliff as fast to the subjected plain. Then disappear. They looking back, all the eastern side beheld of paradise, so late their happy seat, waved over by that flaming brand. The gate with dreadful faces thronged and fiery arms. Some natural tears they dropped, but wiped them soon. The world was all before them, where to choose their place of rest, and Providence their guide. They, hand in hand, with wandering steps and slow, through Eden took their solitary way.